All right, Simon, Chris, just let me know that the recording has started, so whenever you're ready, let's go ahead and get started.
Jolly good. Can you see my desktop, Len?
Yes, I can.
So, welcome, folks. This is Simon Cockayne. I'm the product owner for CA2E, and I'm hosting a session today where we're getting together with a bunch of 2E customers. I see some friendly names on the call. And we're going to talk about SQL improvements to CA2E. A bit of background, we just had CA2E 8.7 go GA in just before the end of October. And the primary vision around that release was to help customers move from a DDS-style database to and there's always the confusing terminology here, an SQL database. And just a nuance on that, when we talk about SQL in 2E, we're talking about the flavor of the database, but really we're talking about a DDL database that can be accessed using SQL, structured query language. So perhaps more confusingly or less is that in 8.7, the way we achieve this is by saying instead of going to allow people to move more easily from the 2E DDS flavor to the 2E SQL flavor, we introduced a third flavor in 2E 8.7 called DDL. And that database flavor is slightly different than the SQL format, but what it means is, or the 2E SQL database, what it means is that you should be able to change your database from DDS to DDL and run most of your existing functions unchanged against this new DDL implemented database. Also, then you have third-party software or other stuff accessing it via SQL. So that was the primary vision of 8.7. Now, we worked on it for a while. We did it in an agile, collaborative fashion. And as we went along, we were taking ideas from the idea wall, and that seeded some of the stuff that we did. A lot of customer feedback as we were going along. There was some additional stuff that as we went through the release. For example, I can use an existing function unchanged with record level type access against this new DDL flavor database, because it includes the record format keyword. But what if I recompile my function? If I recompile it, now it wants to recompile with SQL-like access. What if I don't want that overhead? So as part of the Agile program, we added to the scope of 8.7 to fulfill the vision of 8.7 and said, if you've got a function and you recompile it over this new DDL flavor, you can choose, do you want it to be recompiled with the existing record level type access, or do you want to start accessing with SQL? So that's an example of how the scope changed to fulfill the vision. Also, though, as we went along, there were some other requests for bits and pieces here and there. Some of it, maybe the awareness came from, this has always been a bit annoying in SQL. And candidly, our goal for 8.7 was not to fix every SQL bug that was out there. It was not to implement every SQL-related enhancement for 2E that had ever been registered. It was really this narrow vision. How can we help, as a first step, customers move from DDS to SQL? So there was some stuff that candidly, as a group of customers, we decided, for example, using some enhancement around optimizing for SQL, we decided not to include that in 8.7. Even though there were some people on the call that would find it very useful in their environment and saw the value of it, there was this really wonderful kind of societal, almost altruistic way of working where it said, what, that's super important to me, but as a group, we see the vision of 8.7 for the wider community. So there was a bunch of stuff that was on the 8.7 or the product backlog that didn't get done for 8.7. There's probably some stuff on the idea wall which isn't on the backlog yet, and there's probably some stuff maybe in your heads round and about that isn't on the idea wall or the backlog right now. So that's kind of the point of this call. 8.7 GA is out there as we are in the planning stages for release 8.8 and thinking, what might we do next? Just wanted to have a call with you guys and see if we can help to start the ball rolling with that. Let me make one thing super clear before we get into the conversation, which is any talk of release 8.8, any talk of features that may or may not be included, any talk of potential dates are all subject to change or withdrawal. This is a very informal chat, but I do not want to mismanage anyone's expectations. So Does anybody want to start off with any questions, concerns, or comments on that kind of opening gambit? And if you are on mute, you can probably unmute your phone through the WebEx interface, or you can use, I think it's *6 or #6. So any initial feedback?
Hey, Simon, this is Len. So if people are not on the phone line, they can feel free to use the chat or Q&A functionality within WebEx as well.
Cool. Thanks, Len. So let's get some initial feedback. Does this sound like a good idea? Is this why you're here? I'll pause while we let people get on the audio. Any feedback, guys? Okay, all right, so it's hard for me to tell if there is an audio problem and no one can hear me, or you can, but I can't hear you, or if you guys literally have no feedback at all and are content at the moment. So let me start with a question. I'll throw it open and we'll see how we handle the response. What's the next thing that anybody would like to throw out here that they would like to see potentially high on the list of things to do for 8.8?
So, Simon, my topic, which I would like to address, is SQL Performance. So, I would say we have a couple of experience feedback from customers which try to move forward to modernize the database coming from DDS to SQL. And this is not a question if we are talk about release 8.6 or 8.7. We have the same problem in 8.7. Regarding some specific functionality where customer needs to regenerate and recompile the program. With other words, where we have constellations where the customers say, okay, these specific number of functions I need to regen so that I have, instead of my record level access or record format access, now the embedded SQL statements. And we have a couple of scenarios where I would say, and this is feedback, qualified feedback from customers, that SQL implementation can be a high risk for the, independent of the question if it is a software house or an internal IT department from a company. SQL modernization can bring in practice, in result, a high risk regarding performance. And I think we can very unique identify the problem areas, and I think it's, I would say, relatively easy to fix these performance issues.
Okay. All right, let me hear from the rest of the folks. So Michael's raised the question that as you move from DDS to, so just to drill into a little bit more, Michael was saying that as you move from DDS to SQL, simply the fact of regenerating, you might end up with a database that, and therefore an application that performs more slowly than the DDS version. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so let me say we have made a lot of tests here, and we have run a couple of test scenarios and have a matrix where we can exactly say which function types in combination with which access paths, and also depending of which key constellation produces the performance issue here. And we talk not about the problem that the end users say, oh, it's a bit slow. We talk about a very, very serious problem that the performance brings down the whole machine. And this is a disaster for the IT department internal. So this is the customers can run in a situation, and this is what I would like to address. Customers can run in a situation where the whole machine, the whole application is stopping because the SQL engine does pick up the whole CPU power.
Okay.
And I think it is a realistic scenario.
Okay.
And yeah, I have also to say this is definitely depending of the data. So when we talk about files, physical tables, where we talk about maximum 2,000, 5,000 records, there's definitely no issue. But typically, we talk about database files with millions of records and a lot of customers working at the same time. And this is a constellation where it is also very difficult to test this before. You can have the real production data, a copy of the production data for your test scenarios. The very interesting information, or the very interesting scenario which you cannot duplicate in your test scenario, is a realistic number of users. The total number of users makes a difference. You can have the same data as in production, but you cannot make a test with a realistic number of production users, and that increases this decreases the performance of the SQL engine and the whole machine. This is a scenario.
Okay, so that's kind of like because again, so part of this is so thank you for describing that scenario. Michael says that he's got a matrix of which describes function types, access paths, and other traits. And when you're in that particular configuration, you can end up with very serious performance problems that can bring down the machine. It's hard to test in advance, and especially harder to test in advance is the high number of users. So before we'll explore that a little bit more with the other folks on the calls, but given that scenario, I think some of the things we want to investigate, is it a real scenario? I've no doubt that it is, Michael, but is there any more color to that? And what can we do about it? Do we do nothing and say, that's the scenario? Do we document that kind of thing can happen and hope that users document it and avoid it? Are there some changes to the product that we can make to alleviate this situation at development time? Are there are there changes we can? Well, I'm just talking abstractly, Michael. Is there are there changes that we can make at runtime to alleviate this? Also, though, are there things that we can do, whether it's software, good practices, methodologies and approaches for simulating a high number of users doing SQL in that environment? Is that something we could use internally to help prove out the product? Is it something that TUI users could use, and so on? So with that kind of background and context, do we have a question, I think, from maybe from Ray Weeks? Ray, can we get you on the audio? I think you want to hit #6 or #6 on your keypad. Do we have a question from Ray on the?
Yes. I mean, it's possible that he's not in the teleconference. So let me go ahead and read it. From Ray Weeks, need consistent error handling for all SQL database operations. Currently, it is not consistent. Not acceptable for production systems. Some types of errors not trapped, and no messaging. So I guess that is more of a comment than a question.
And also maybe like a request as well, right?
Yeah.
So we need consistent error handling for all error operations, and as an example, there's some SQL errors are trapped with no messaging. Is that? I hope that's a correct reflection of what you said then, Len?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's just go back to the specific point that Michael made about performance. Has anybody else seen this problem? Is anybody else aware of a TUI application at runtime in a certain configuration bringing a machine down? Have we seen that? Okay. Michael, question for you. The scenario you identified, has this actually happened? Have we seen a machine go down, or is it a problem that's at the moment theoretical but which could happen?
No. The story which I can tell you is exactly the story of a customer. And as I mentioned, it was not a small problem, and after some cups of coffee this was resolved. No, this was reported to the highest management level, and IBM Rochester was involved because of the problem. So we talk about a machine which is running here for a very large customer. I was told this is the largest IBM I system here in Europe, the largest installation from IBM, and we talk about 15,000 active users. So this is not a small game here. This is and the problems in which they run, because they had the 2E department had changed some DDS database files to SQL was a big boomerang which was coming back to them. Yeah.
Okay.
And they had serious problems to explain what is going wrong. So what is about your testing, and they're very strong. Yeah, a lot of trouble. They get a lot of trouble as response of this modernization, and I think we can very simple address the problems, and it can be fixed in a manual code change in RPG or COBOL in a couple of seconds. It's a very small thing.
Okay. So do you want to describe the enhancement that, because what I've understood from you, there is an a manual code change you can make to the source, and therefore potential for a code generation enhancement that could prevent this. Is that the case?
Yes. So the answer is relatively simple. We have exactly to do what the IBM Advice. So for specific constellations where the SQL engine is not sure if it is better, or better means it is faster, to use a full table scan rather than to use the also present unique index. For some constellations, we need to address in the program for the SQL engine that we only wish to access 1 record, 5 records, whatever, and the keyword, I think it's well known for you. It's the optimize clause, which is not available currently in the generation. And yeah, in the past we had discussed this sometimes, and one idea is to define this for specific functions as a function option whenever the database implementation is set to SQL or to DDL. So that, and this is my opinion, I would say it is very difficult to define this in general by a default or in the tool. It is a responsibility of the developer to understand the impact when he changes to SQL. But from my understanding, I would say it is necessary that the 2E developer can say, okay, for this function and that specific access, an example and retrieve object with the full key, I need to address whenever I have in the background a database file with 10 million records and I have a full restricted key. It's necessary to address that I wish only to access 1 record, which is the case when I have a full key, yes, a full restricted key for an in and retrieve object.
So you're saying it's the responsibility of the 2E developer to decide for that specific function, I want to specify whether or not I want to include the optimized keyword?
Yes.
Okay. And therefore, would maybe this would be done through a function option?
Yes, I would say a function option which becomes switched from hidden to visible, depending on the database implementation. Would make sense for me. So as a basic idea, yeah.
Yeah. So let's get some feedback on that. So we think that so obviously you could go and hand code and add the optimized keyword in if that made sense in your environment. Obviously 2E has a long history of wanting to make things easier for developers, and obviously if you change it in the source, the next time you generate it's going to get overridden. So a function option classically set to some default, potentially through a model value. And then Michael's suggestion is the 2E model is not going to be clever enough, and it's okay if we don't have that intelligence in order to choose whether we should include the optimized keyword. But to have a function option that the user and the developer could decide, you know what, this function, I do want to include the optimized keyword, set it accordingly, generate it. What do people think about that? Is this, Are there other workarounds or solutions? Is this solution poor in some way? Does it do too much? Does it do too little? Is this an important issue that we really want to see fixed? Can we get some feedback from the folks on the call here now? And again, you can do it over the audio, or you can do it over the chat. It's and while you guys are responding, I'll say that as you can see, I think from this kind of session, we are trying to all the time innovate and improve the depth and breadth to which we collaborate with the 2E community. And this gives you a chance for everyone on the call here now. If everybody said, for example, this is not an important issue, we should be working on something else, then we can have that conversation. If we think that Michael's workaround is could be improved in some way, if there's some kind of algorithm that could help us choose when to choose optimize, that would be good feedback. So any kind of feedback on how we prioritize this against other stuff, is it important or not, and how we do it. So any feedback, guys? I'm not seeing any feedback in the chat window.
Maybe, Simon, maybe it's helpful. We have prepared a one-page Excel sheet decision table where we can show which are the critical functions, and we have also prepared a model where we can very easily show you the performance issue. And for example, we have a file which has 1 million records, and it's a typical display file edit file function where you have no keys defined for input, so that you start with the first record. And yeah, typically based on the DDS, we access this file page per page. And you will see that the first call needs a lot of time, because the engine, instead of the maybe expected 12 records per page, will read the whole file, the 1 million records, before you get the first screen. Yeah.
So let me ask: does anybody? Again, I'm getting very, very little feedback from the group. Maybe that's for technical reasons or other reasons, I'm not sure. Would the group prefer to see Michael's demo to illustrate the situation more deeply? Do we want to move on to something different? So Len, I'm still hearing nothing on the audio from the audience one way or the other, and nothing in the chat window.
Yeah. So everybody, if you're on the webcast and you would like to dial in and you're not dialed in, I actually just posted the phone number and passcode into the chat box. So if you would like to join us that way, the information is there. But like I said earlier, you can also use the chat window or the Q&A window to ask your questions or to offer your feedback to Simon and Michael.
Let's just pause for 1 second, Michael, see if we can get some feedback from folks. So Ray's saying that he's not on the phone. Thanks, Ray. Okay, so I think Ray's saying that he's got a big problem around select star. Ray, do you want to give us some more indication about how what the select star problem is for you? Michael, thank you for the offer of the demo, but I think I think that was nicely described, and we'll see what other issues people want to look at. So, Ray, select star. If there's an idea on the idea wall already, Ray, let us know. If there isn't, and you want to describe it in the Q&A window or the chat window, let us know. If anybody else has got a different topic as well, let us know, and we can queue that up. by the way, on the while we're waiting for either some more indication from Ray about his specific select star problem, on the idea wall, which you can see over here in the communities, there is an idea mark there around retrieve SQL performance enhancement. You can see here to improve processing efficiency, add a new function option for SQL implementation so that optimize for NN rows is included. That's been around since 2012. If you want to go and vote on the idea, you can jump out to the wall and vote on it. And just to, for those of you who don't know, if you go to communities.ca.com, I'll just show the navigation here, which might be useful for folks. So communities.ca.com, click on communities up here. It may well ask you to log in, and you put your normal kind of support password in there. Underneath communities, if you filter on to, you can scroll down the list, or you can filter on 2E. So this is the CA Plex 2E community, which obviously we use for forums and so on. But if you go to content here, and then over on the ideas section over here, the light bulb, that's ideas both for Plex and 2E. So if you filter it by 2E, this is a list of ideas. So these are the things that people have suggested. It could be internal folks, it could be CA staff, that for a small number of them. For example, this one here, Consumer Web Service, I added that in a while ago. And we can vote on these things. So if we sort by score, we'll see that, the number one top item here is Consume a Web Service, and that's got about 24 points. We can see some functionality around select emit in SQL and meaningful names in WSDL. That one was delivered in 8.7. If we go and see a note on this one here, you'll see that there's a comment, and it explains that this particular idea, you've got the idea at the top, maybe some other either extra business justification or discussion backwards and forwards. And then it will mark down here that the idea was delivered, it will explain the idea was delivered in 8.7, a snippet from the release notes, and talk about the fact that any particular limitations, like here, this is only for the new DDL type database. And if anybody thinks that we haven't completely fulfilled the suggested idea, then you can feel free to create a new idea that's on a more focused area. So that's just to give you an idea of things that have been delivered, things that have been under review. And if we scroll down here to our SQL one, which I think might be on the next page, this retrieve object performance one. Here, look, so that's got 7 votes on it. So what does that mean? This is very important to Michael, for example, but if only 7 people in the community believe that this is really important, then perhaps we should give more weight to some of these other things that are higher up the list. So if you want your idea to be, or to get more visibility, to bubble up the list, then you really need to be voting on the idea. You can add comments and add your business justification. What you talked about, Michael, this the point that, here it talks about the very detailed technical functionality about, what we might want to do, but it doesn't talk about the value that's delivered. It doesn't talk about the fact that, your database could be brought down, or the machine could be brought down. It doesn't talk about the combinations and so on. So feel free, Michael, the demo you talked about, that matrix, any color, do feel free to add this as a comment. Maybe that will get other people talking about it. And also in the forum itself, in the general forum there, you can feel free to point other people to this idea and say it's been updated, or say that you're looking for support. Ask your customers, colleagues to vote on it and so on. So that's just a bit more about the mechanics of the board. So if we go back to Ray's point, Ray's saying that you can get a 10 to 20% improvement by changing select star to a named list of fields. So if I'm understanding that correctly, Ray, if you've got 10 columns in a database, instead of saying select star, if we're saying select those named columns, that's faster. Is that correct? And I'm waiting for Ray to respond on the chat on my other window over here. I'm just browsing the idea wall to see if that's an existing idea as well. So, for example, there's a kind of related issue here from, I think it's Eamon Foley, who's saying that when the SQL generator generates a select statement, can the statement list the specific fields instead of star, which will make for less work when the file is changed? You know, if you like that idea, please go and vote on it. If you don't like it, you can vote it down, by the way. You can add your justification. And Ray's commenting saying that, no, only select what the program is going to use, say like 10 columns out of 100. Okay, all right. Does anybody know if that's an existing, is this the idea that I'm showing here, Ray, is that the same thing that you're talking about, do you think? They look kind of similar, actually, although for different reasons. Okay, Ray's saying that he thinks it's probably not. So, do you know, Ray, is there an existing idea on the idea wall for this? I didn't see one. Okay. So, Ray, can I make a suggestion to you? And again, this is some, I guess it was implied earlier on, but I'll say it explicitly now. This conversation here, this 50 minutes that we're chatting here, this is not to come up with a definitive list of what we're going to do in 8.8. This is, again, part of the ongoing conversation, collaboration with the community, trying to raise awareness that we're thinking about planning our release 8.8 now, that there's been some, some background of SQL stuff that has been bubbling up, partly because of the vision of 8.7. So this conversation is not a definitive list. So, for example, for Ray's point there, he's talking about there could be a 10 to 20% improvement around performance, around select. We don't think that the idea is on the idea wall. So my ask to you, Ray, please, is could you post an idea on the TUI idea wall explaining what it is you would like to see, and ideally adding the value of why you would want to do it. In this case, it could be for improved runtime performance. It could be a whole range of other values because things are easier for developers, easier for customers, things are faster, more secure, more stable, easy to maintain. Whatever the justification is, if you put that in there, then again, it helps us prioritize. If one idea is voted by lots of people and it might save, it's hard to figure some of this stuff out, but if it might save, an hour every time we do an installation, if you weigh that against an idea that's a bit lower down the board, but it's going to save, hours every week for some reason, then again, that's a balance. So it's not just the position in the board in of itself that allows us to prioritize this stuff. It's, the impact, the importance, and how it might help folks. So, direct question to Ray. And Ray's saying okay, and I really appreciate that, Ray. So Ray's going to post that idea. And then it is, for all of us, especially the TUI customers, if Ray's going to go to the time and trouble to post an idea on the wall and try and color the context and the value, then we need, if the community jumps in and gives us their feedback that you love it, it'd be really valuable to you, or that you think it's a bad idea, architecturally it goes against the grain of the product, it's going to cause you a lot of grief, you can vote the idea down as well and put your justification. And it's this rich conversation that helps us understand. So Ray's asking if there are other people on the line, and I would ask the same thing. We've had Michael speaking, we've got Ray who's connected to the call but not on the audio. do we have any feedback from anybody else? And I've asked this several times now, and I'm not getting feedback from others, although I do see a whole bunch of participants on the call, Len. I think we've got about 12 people. Can we get some feedback from some of the other folks on the line? Okay, well, all I can do is ask Ray. Let's see who else we've got. 1 second. Yeah, I mean, Alex, Ian, Shane, Yvonne, do you guys have any thoughts on the ideas so far? Any other ideas of particular things that you guys want to see in the product? You can use the audio, you can use the chat window, you can use the Q&A window. You don't have to write an essay. You can start off and give us a ball rolling with some keywords of what you're after. Okay. All right. So I guess we can continue to move on. Let's have a look at, again, this is the prioritized idea wall as we see it today right now. And if we look around the SQL related stuff, it might give people some idea of where we are with it. Run SQL statement. If there's any of these ideas that people want to talk about on this call here now, please let me know about that. What I might do is switch gears a little bit and also talk about some stuff that we delivered at 8.7, some stuff that's on the backlog. So again, be warned here. It says release 8.8. I'm showing you our internal backlog here. That does not mean that it's definitely guaranteed to end up in release 8.8. We're still in the planning phase. But what you can see here is this SQL enhancements bundle. The purple thing is an epic. That means it's too big to do in one sprint, whether it's a 4-week sprint or 2-week or whatever. And then what we did was the ones with a strike through, these are things that were delivered at 8.7. So anything with a strike through, that's already been delivered. And there's a comment here that Yvonne is asking, saying that she's here to learn about the new 8.7. Can we again review what is and is not in 8.7? So just to that point, Yvonne, this particular meeting is, we're not here to deliver in detail what's in 8.7. We're talking about what do we want to do after 8.7. So to everybody on the call, if you're not clear on what is in CA2 release 8.7 right now, you should be able to go to support.ca.com, go to the TUI product page, and you'll be able to find the documentation for TUI 8.7. It will list in there all the new features, including the specific stuff around SQL. And like I said, anything that's been delivered in 8.7, you should see that updated on the idea wall, and anything that is a candidate after that, obviously, will be added later. So let me know if that doesn't answer your question, Yvonne. So you can see that optimized for n rows. This was one of the ideas that is on the backlog right now. There is a scenario document that we're thinking about putting together. Thank you, Yvonne. Yvonne says that does answer the question. We thought about putting a scenario document together that would warn about when DDS field names might be invalid for SQL. So as we know, SQL is more particular about the naming of fields than DDS is. So if you just do a straight conversion from DDS to SQL, or indeed DDS to DDL, you might end up with field names that don't make sense. Obviously, it's going to throw some kind of erroring, and you're going to have to go and change it. And we thought that a useful, or customer feedback was, if we put a scenario document together which described in more detail what names would be valuable, then that might help people prevent themselves getting in a pickle. Ray, is that something that would be useful, do you think? We know that, or we did some searching in the IBM, and IBM support say that they don't really have a document which clearly explains the naming that's required for SQL compared to DDL. So if anybody's got any thoughts on that, feel free to add that in. And I think there's one more story here that was on the backlog previously. So here, what about controlling access at the database layer? So in the function right now, you can certainly choose to have SQL style access. You can either choose something like record level access or SQL-like access. What if you could choose at the database level, so within your create object, delete object, change object, and retrieve object, what if you could choose so that within a single external function that might encompass one or more of those database objects, you could mix and match, so you could end up with the external doing some RLA, some SQL, and that might allow you to tweak your performance. Let me ask it to the group, does anybody see value in that story? I feel like I'm particularly asking, Ray says he does. So, I don't know right now, Ray, frankly, if this is on the idea wall. So what I'm going to do is take an action point for myself. I don't think it is, frankly. One second. So Ray, thank you for that. I think that I'm going to add that to the idea wall, and again, that gives us an ability for customers to vote on that and have a look at that. Okay, so I think that that's all the ones that were. One second. Sorry, guys. I believe that those were all the ones that were on the backlog from 8.7 that, as you saw, didn't get done within 8.7. So I'll add that one in. So we've already got an action point for people to think about voting for Michael's idea. I guess a question for you, Michael, is do you think that this SQL retrieve object idea, do you think that that is the one that we should track your proposed work under, your enhancement under, Michael? Is it only around retrieve object performance?
No. As I mentioned, we have made complex tests, and I would say we have a good overview, and it's up to the CA lab to retest the scenarios to come to the same result or to different. I would say we have a good overview about the critical constellations into E where we need to add the optimized statement for X rows in the source code so that the engine works as we expect, uses the index instead of the full table scan.
Okay.
And as I mentioned,
so it would be, okay, so you would say that this is definitely the focus of just retrieve objects is too narrow for you, correct?
Performance, SQL, retrieve object performance enhancement. Yeah, so the word performance enhancement is not perfect matching. So
right, and this is an interesting observation as well. So at the base level, when we decided to start using the idea walls, I'm being very candid here. If somebody puts an idea out, and let's say this button is red, I prefer it to be green. And I'm using an especially simple example. People can easily get behind that and say, like, yeah, I'll vote for that idea. But what if you get like 5, 10, 15, 20 people voting on the idea? Yes, the red square could be green. And then you get people saying, actually, the blue triangle should be green as well, and start voting under that same idea. You can see that what you can end up with is the specific idea as it was originally created doesn't always match the exact scope of what the people voting for the idea might think. Maybe you want it to be a little larger. In this case, Michael might want for it to cover other functions over and above retrieve object. And other people might want to think about, in another scenario, if Michael had put, I want function options for every single function type to mark this thing. Maybe in other people's environments, they're only mainly concerned about retrieve objects, and they wanted to spend time doing that. So if you get to the stage where you see an idea and you are interested in it, it's very similar or overlaps or is a subset of what you want to see, feel free to vote on the idea, and then feel free to add your context. And then what will happen is this conversation will slowly morph. And as we bring this idea into the backlog, what I'll end up doing is saying, okay, for this idea that's exactly as you saw in that other example, what I'll end up doing is saying at some point, okay, based on the voting of this idea, based on the conversation that's gone on here, what we'll do is I'm going to add an idea to the product backlog, and maybe that has something along the lines of, for all database function types or for whatever function types it makes sense, and I'll name them, we'll add this function option. That's going to go in our backlog. People can still feel free. If we get, a deluge of feedback on that idea then that says, no, we only need retrieve object, then maybe we'll reconsider. The other portion is anybody who's taken part in the Agile collaboration program for 2E, so that goes beyond any 2E customer seeing the idea wall. Then it goes on to you being able to see the backlog every 2 weeks and see the stories as we start to deliver it a slice at a time. During that process, if as a group we decide, we've gone along with this and we've delivered, and I'm just talking hypothetically, if we've delivered this function option for all the database function types and we think that's enough, then maybe we'll come back to this idea, we'll update that, and then another conversation starts off. So I'm not trying to overcomplicate things. I'm just trying to point out that what is a simple idea for one person might not quite match somebody else's, and it's difficult to get a community of people to talk about that idea and end up with something that makes a sufficient number or majority of people happy. And I think like most things that are a bit abstract like this or a bit complicated, you can't automate it. It's not that easy to have one rule that guides all things. So it's all about the conversation. So we are at the end of time for this session. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. I will say thank you very much to the folks that joined the call, and also to the people that are watching the recording of the call, which will be posted in the community. To the people on the call, Ray's got at least one idea he's offered to post. Michael, you can feel free to either add your justification for this idea onto this idea. If you want to create an entirely separate one and be more specific about what you want to see, you can create a different idea. Anybody can advertise those ideas in the forum. Please do feel free to vote things up or down. And also, if you are interested in joining the Agile Collaboration Program, which will get set up at some point soon, there'll be a web link. You go in there, you fill in your details and so on. You mark in which features you're interested in testing that we think or looking at in the release, and then you will be invited to sprint reviews every 2 weeks. You'll be able to see the features we've worked on. You'll be able to download a cut of the product with those features in there, not for use in production, but for the purposes of collaboration and validation. I would urge people to get interested in that. We've had great success with the program over the past couple of releases. So let's pause it at that. We've all got stuff that we can do around this. And let's see where we are maybe in a few weeks' time in the new year. And we can start to give you a clearer idea of what we think might form the basis of some SQL content for Release 8.8. Len, I'll hand over to you as well to say thank you very much and close us out, Len.
All right, thanks very much, everybody. We'll speak to you next time.
Okay.